Hi, good evening. This is Sharda Ugra here talking about my latest column with the Hindustan Times. It is about a very strange circular from the Sports Ministry that suddenly just popped up into our sort of orbit, into our ambit. It appeared on the day the union budget was being presented, so not too many people paid any attention to it. But it has a very strange clause mentioned in it. It's called the relaxation clause with regards to the National Sports Code of 2011. Let me read out a little section of what that circular said, and then I'll have a conversation with a very interesting and very informed person in connection with sports administration and the law and so on. It should surprise to many of you. So, anyhow, this circular said government shall have the power to relax any provisions of the Sports Development Code of India 2011 and other instructions issued with regard to recognition of national sports federations, renewal of recognition of the NSF on an annual basis, and governance and management of the Indian Olympic Association and NSFs as a special exemption where considered necessary and expedient for the promotion of sports persons, always guided by and not inconsistent with the overarching spirit of good governance. The power to relax the provisions will vest in the minister in charge of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. Now, to make sense of all this, it looks absolutely like a almost an abandonment of the sports code. I have with me Rahul Mehra from Delhi. Hi, Rahul. Welcome. Once again,
Hi, Sharda.
we are speaking about these issues. Rahul, as everyone knows, has been a lawyer, and he, I think, has made. He's much more famous for his the sports legislation that he has questioned, that he has set up in place, that he's been a part of. So I want to talk to you, Rahul, about this bizarre relaxation clause that has happened. What do you think about it? What are you doing about it? And what it's been like to be in this exercise of challenging sports administration in India for the last more than 20 years.
Well, imagine, I'm 22 years in my profession, and out of those 21 years, I've been fighting sports federations, and I never thought I'll be fighting the union government, frankly, because for last almost 11 years, I've been championing their own cause, trying to defend their own code, which they should be actually more keen to get implemented through various national sports federations. But as things stand in India, in almost everything, politics takes over everything else, and it's a terrible concoction of sorts if sports and politics gets mixed up, because we know what politicians do wherever they go, and the cesspool that they create, most of them. And therefore, it's nothing unique when politicians enter sports. Having said that, though it's been a long journey, but in bits and pieces, it's been very frustrating and yet very accomplishing at times. It's been very satisfying as well. The current problem actually arose about a year back when I went to court and said that because the Narendra Batra, as the president of IOA, was actually trying to muscle and get into all the sports federations where he thought probably are the federations which are not eventually going to toe his line and vote for him when the D-Day comes in the IOA elections, which is fast approaching. And therefore, what he tried to do was, under the garb of international federations mandate, and we all know how international federations work and how the International Olympic Committee is structured. It's a cozy club of all wrong sort of people. It's actually a mirror reflection of what NSFs are in India. So therefore, he actually piggybacked on those international federations, got them to send a letter to the IOA, and started entering into the autonomous working of these federations. So these federations typically are 50, 70, 80 years old. And he started de-recognizing these federations and planting his own federations simultaneously by, giving a structure of a society and having his own chosen people man those. And in most of these cases, ad hoc committees were created with IOA own people manning those bodies. So there was this transition happening. And I went to court saying that this is what IOA is doing, and the ministry is absolutely, behaving like an ostrich. They are not intervening. IOA has no such powers to actually de-recognize these bodies and create ad hoc bodies. Their own constitution does not give them the power. And in the process, I got an order from the court in February of 2020, where the Delhi High Court, where my PIL is now pending for almost 11 years, and various federations have been de-recognized, and the sports code has come in, and various other things have happened. And the law now is that sports code is sacrosanct and legal and mandatory and binding till the time the legislation comes in, a sports legislation. So in that, the Delhi High Court division bench, actually a special bench, said that they will not be permitted. IOA and Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports will have to take their prior consent if they, in case of any recognitions or any decisions to be taken qua these NSFs.
The court's
Now,
prior consent. They'll have to take the
that's
court.
right.
Okay, all right.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. So subsequently, when in the month of May, April, May, and June of 2020, when the lockdown was there, this is what ministry did. So what they did was, they, without taking the consent of the court, they started recognizing federations, saying that we are extending annual recognitions to these people, these federations. I filed an application in the court and said that they had to take a prior consent. This is a violation of the order, and therefore to that extent it's a contempt, and they should be asked not to do so. And in fact, all these federations which have been given annual recognitions are not conforming to the code. Each one of them is not conforming to the code, and therefore there is no question of extending the annual recognition to them. The court simply asked a question to the ministry as to whether what I am saying is right or not. And obviously, since they couldn't, they knew the answer, but they couldn't say it in the court. So they went around and around in circles. To which the court asked me, Mr. Mehra, can you just put everything on paper? Can you investigate into all the national sports federations of the country
And
and tell us?
Here, let me say there are more than 50. I think 56 or 58 is the number.
56,
56. Yes.
56 recognized by the government, and many more which are actually not recognized. So the court asked me as an individual to probe into every single federation and tell them as to which are the violations which each one of them is indulging in. I must say it was a very challenging task for an individual, and when nothing is in the public domain, these people actually behave like as if these are nuclear secrets, and they try to protect their own data because all sorts of nonsense happens out there. So anyway, to cut the story short, I was able to prepare a 259-page affidavit in which I gave two specific annexures running into about 30-40 pages, showing two things. One, how these 56 are actually, each one of them is violating the sports code, and what are the provisions that they are violating. And two, according to their own constitution, the constitution is not in line with the code, and therefore they are violating the code. So what is the violation in the constitution which it lacks, and what is the violation otherwise as far as the code is concerned?
Which the ministry should be checking and rechecking before you hand out.
Absolutely, because as that's right. Under the code, it is the responsibility of the national sports federations to actually give suo motu voluntary disclosures on their website of all these things which I was referring to. And it is the solemn statutory duty of the Government of India, Ministry of Youth Affairs Sports, to, based on the disclosures and their own investigation as a ministry, to grant recognition thereafter. If they are not meeting these criteria, there's no question of granting recognition, is what the court says. Now the battle is, because of that particular order, which they actually took to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, okay, you don't have to take prior consent, but you will have to go back to the court. Now what is happening is they have to conform to the court and come back to the court. They can take their own decisions, but they have to inform the court.
I must just step in here and point out to anyone who's watching this is that Rahul Mehra has taken every single sports association in the country to court. There is a public interest litigation that is on about their functioning, about their funding, how they are organized. And if the country even has a sports code and a rough framework of rules, it is because this case has been fought over 20 years by Rahul Mehra at various sort of stages, aided by a sports minister, Ajay Makan, who did take some steps towards getting there to be a response to it, for sports federations to be accountable. So, when you saw this particular circular, Rahul, what was your reaction when they suddenly popped up? Like I said, in the middle of nowhere, suddenly you get blindsided by it one night.
Actually, I was expecting it almost a year back. So they are a year late in my book. But that's the way governments work. They're always late, right? If you read the circular, what do they say? In larger sporting interests,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
national interest, in
yeah.
sports person's interest, and every
Promotion
action
of
of
sports
theirs.
and sports persons, guided by
That's
overarching
right.
spirit of good governance. Yeah.
On a document which is yours for 10 years, on a document which is at least living in 1975, which they actually agreed to in 1975, which they were not conforming to in 2001 and 2010. And then I took them to court that please follow the 1975 agreement between the ministry and the NSFs, including IOA. And now in 2021, you want to dilute it.
Yeah.
All it makes you as a citizen of this country, as a sports person of this country, as a budding sports person of this country, as a person who wants to make a fair and a decent career out of sports, to play for the country, unless and until you have a godfather, you can't make it in this country, or you have to be a Sachin Tendulkar, where you can't be negated. Your
Mm,
talent is so huge that
mm,
you will be taken on. So, what I have now done is I have again filed another application asking for a stay of this, and I'm hopeful that the court, which has always, it's 100% success rate of mine, not
mhm.
because I'm a great lawyer of sorts, or I want to give, acknowledge my efforts, but simply because what they do is so brazen, and
Mm.
what they do is so illegal and arbitrary and whimsical, that it's so easy for me to just show the documents that they create to the court, and the court understands it in a second. And therefore we get these kind of favorable orders from the court.
So
And
you will
thankfully
be
Delhi High Court has been championing this particular cause, driving it right, at the forefront of it.
so you will be challenging the relaxation clause. You already
I
have
have
done.
already challenged.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's coming up tomorrow, Sharda, and hopefully it will be stayed. Is what my expectations are, and I hope I'm able to make out a good case before the court.
And the tomorrow that Rahul Mehra is referring to here is the 12th of February, which is a Friday. And the story is, as we know, definitely going to continue. Thank you so much again, Rahul. Great talking to you. We could talk
Always
for
a
another
pleasure.